What kind of young people have grown up in these past 20 years of war, nuclear energy, and unprecedented prosperity? How well do we really know this new generation? This is the first of a two-part program on the generation which has been called the most baffling in our history, as the Prudential Insurance Company of America presents the 20th century.
This is the 5 spot. It's a favorite hangout for college students. We're going to meet some of them. They're different from their parents. How different and why is our story. In a moment, Generation Without a Cause. Part 1, Self-Portrait.
I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time for a number of things that weren't important yesterday. And I'm taking the time.
More and more of our young people are going to college. Right now, almost 40% of their age group. It is here that the new ideas, new causes, new challenges of a generation first appear. But today we hear this large part of our young generation called silent, tranquil, beat. Many studies have been made to find out what the students really feel and believe. And these were recently summarized by Dr. Philip E. Jacob, Professor of Political Science, University of Pennsylvania.
The first surprising thing about this generation of students is their similarity. Despite their widely different backgrounds, in spite of their opportunities for freedom of thought and personal development, their values and attitudes are remarkably alike. Equally surprising are the attitudes and values themselves.
Upon graduation, I'll be looking for a job which will provide me with a secure, stable future.
I feel that whatever I accomplish in life will be through my own efforts, and that people should look out for themselves.
The thing that's going to give me the most satisfaction in life is marriage and a family.
I believe definitely that my marriage and my family will be the most important thing in my life.
To me, the most important qualification of the ideal job is one that will enable me to look forward to a secure and stable future.
I have found that many of my fellow students say things or do things simply because other people are saying them or doing them.
These are typical values of most college students. From these and hundreds of other consistent attitudes, a profile emerges, a profile of a new kind of young American. He is unabashedly self-centered, aspiring above all to material gratification for himself and his family. He fully accepts the conventions of his society and cheerfully expects to conform to the economic status quo. To get a fuller portrait of him, one need only visit any typical university.
To get this fuller portrait, we went to Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Rutgers was founded in 1766. It's one of the oldest institutions of higher learning in the United States. Dr. Richard McCormick is professor of history and the university historian. We asked Dr. McCormick if he would compare today's students with those of his own generation.
Well, I would say that the most striking difference between the student of this generation and the student of my own generation 20 years ago is the lack of radicalism on our campuses today. 20 years ago, the students were deeply concerned about a number of causes, about fascism, about isolationism, the New Deal, communism, socialism. They formed organizations to agitate for causes. Nowadays, you find very little in the way of campus radicalism. Students don't have the same concerns. And part of the reason, I think, is because these issues are no longer so much concern to our society at large. Another thing, I think, that the student of the present generation is more concerned about his personal adjustment to society rather than thinking in terms of large collective movements.
Then we asked Mr. John Ciardi, poet, editor, and professor of English, how he would characterize today's college students.
Oh, that's a tough one. They're different from college students in my days. We were supposed to be crazy. I think the college student today conforms, at least on the surface. I'm not sure he does in depth, but he tends to be a conformist on the surface. He doesn't want to get any difficulties. He's interested in the group, and especially in his group standing. I used to say that students should be a little crazy. By the time they get out of school and acquire a wife and a mortgage and a job, that's going to sober them up fast. They should start with a little head of insanity. I was troubled about the fact that freshmen come in already acting like bank clerks. I don't know what's going to save them from sobriety after they're out. But as I get to know them better and think about this, I think they're not quite so conformist inside. I think they're working protective camouflage.
To get opinions from students themselves, we went to one of the fraternity houses. Here at Delta Phi, some intelligent and articulate young men spoke frankly, not only about themselves, but about their fellow students.
Many of the fellows that I have met, I would say, are security-minded. They are conformists, and to a very large degree they're naive. They're taking courses of a very practical nature, and they are getting a very practical training, but very little education.
Well, I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think the things you've cited are more effects than causes. I think the cause goes a lot deeper. I think we have a lot of pressures, and the pressures say, do this, do this, do this, do this, do a whole lot of things, and if you do them, you're going to end up being so confused you won't know where you are.
As soon as we find ourselves trying to do anything actively in opposition to the normal procedures, we find ourselves knocking our heads against the wall.
So instead they say, all right, I'll sit behind my desk and I'll pull in a nice salary. I'll pull in something like $8,000 a year, and I'll be comfortable, and I'll have a family, and I'll have a car, and I won't have to worry about anything at all because I'll conform.
And anything in opposition to these things that are normal procedures today is scorned upon by the majority. Now, are these pressures affecting everybody? Are these the kind of things that perhaps are frustrating our generation?
Well, I had, a little while ago, I put up a little petition, for nuclear weapons testing to stop it. And no one would sign it because they were afraid that, well, this is a communist front organization. It so happened to have been an organization that got the Nobel Peace Prize. But nonetheless, it was communist front, and no one would sign it.
Not only do we have a society demanding conformity, but we have a generation A youthful generation of people who are afraid to take stands.
Because they feel, what's in it for me? Why should I sign this piece of paper? How much do I get paid for it?
My point is that there's no place in society for any differing opinion.
Well, there should be. This is the
There
problem.
should be. We all agree there should
my-
be. So you just stand there and you're frustrated.
This is the problem of America today.
I don't think it's a problem of America today.
Certainly, we want
I think it's what
swept
every day.
wings.
Yeah, well, that too is the average thing today for the college student to believe. I have to oppose this, I have to oppose that. I'm a young intellectual.
I mean, I'm not so opposed to the nice gray flannel man. I mean, he can be happy in his little split level with his vomiting children if he likes. But I'm opposed to the fact that when a man rebels actively, there's no space in which he can be drawn up. I mean, he's pushing himself against the wall, or perhaps Wall Street, or perhaps my point is the organization has become too overpowering, and one doesn't have any place to go when he rebels.
Well, isn't that then one of the feelings of our society? A feeling of futility, more or less, I think. That you can't fight it. There's 175 million people in the United States. Who am I against this? I'll just conform when I have to and when I get a chance.
For other people, or do you live your life for yourself? I think the important thing is do what you really think is right. I think it's a greater pressure when everybody's opposed to you to stand up and do what you want to do, not because it's different, not because it'll make you feel like an individual, but because it's the right thing for you. And I think it takes really a lot of guts to stand up and do what you want to do when everybody else is different and looking at you and saying, what's he doing? He's not a conformist. He's trying to be an individual. He's a phony.
Would you advocate a happy medium then?
No, I wouldn't.
To get out of school, graduate, find yourself a suburbia someplace, get your station wagon, have your split level home, then start going down in your split level den and taking opium or something.
And what's all this going to lead to? We're just going to turn into a generation of people who live in split levels and have children, while a couple of outcasts sit in the corner muttering, to hell with martinis and minks or something? I'm saying anything that's nonconformity for the sake of nonconformity or opposition for the sake of opposition is no good.
You have opposition right here at school. I'm a senior. I'm not engaged to a girl. I'm not pinned to a girl. Now, this is a social stigmata on me. I don't have a girl at Crosstown, at Douglass, or elsewhere wearing my fraternity pin. This is horrible. I'm not with the game. Something's wrong. I better see my doctor.
There's another one of these pressures,
Yeah, well, this is all pressure. A girl, if she's not going to be married 2 weeks, 2 months after she gets out, well, she better hang up her hat.
Kids today, by the time they're 21, they're getting married, they're settling down, they want security, they're afraid to do anything.
Well, what's their reason for wanting to get married at this age? Why do you feel their pressures are on them?
For one thing, it changes their draft status.
Yes, that's the prime motivation for getting married.
It's certainly one of the motives.
I think they're getting married because there's nothing to do. I mean, there's no place to go. You might as well get married and have your sex young. I mean, why should you wait another 5 years? Because what's going to happen?
Marry young, plain Jane, who bakes good corn muffins and is going to meet you in the morning or see you off in the morning and meet you at night with apron and arms outstretched.
Well, I think it's a little bit more
This is a
than
rather
that.
nauseating aspect of marriage for me.
Who majors in business can go very far today up the line in business without being married, because your wife is certainly an integral part of your business.
Well, I know.
Your wife has to be there to serve the cocktails and when you're entertaining the boss or the salesman.
Well, this hits onto a good point, though. You should be a little more selective in who you're going to marry. You shouldn't be so hot to jump into it. What if your wife can't mix martinis when you have 7 or 8 people there?
The American ideal is to have blonde-haired wife, children, split-level home, and have a job and do something productive and know something technical and be a business administration
You
major.
have to do something that's accepted. Also.
You have to have a wife
do something that's accepted.
Doug, well, what's your conception of a good wife?
Who loves the PTA going, who's very businesslike.
God, I don't want a wife like that. Couldn't.
What kind of wife do you want?
I think I'd enjoy a wife who's not only interesting, but
plenty of money besides.
Well, plenty of money. What's wrong with that?
Well, nothing. You can live rich as well as poor, I guess.
Right.
Well, you want to live off your wife's money?
No, but I certainly think she can cushion the blow, if possible.
And I think it's much of what marriage is at a young age.
Well,
a stabilizing influence.
Isn't that proof that this is simply a search for security, another
That's
way
right.
of getting security?
Being married is hardly being secure.
What my criticism is, too many fellas get married at this point. In other words, they're not going to go out and do something where they're going to get married. They're not going to travel and see Europe and get anything accomplished. They're going to get married.
I think the fact that a man gets married for no reason but that he has nothing better to do indicates that the woman's philosophy is sort of encroaching upon a man's territory and forcing him into it. She's almost got him hypnotized.
I think the point is that men in a family have no creative drives. They're too lost. They've succumbed to the corporation, and they have nothing creative to do except have children and have a woman whom they often put on a pedestal.
You know, who is the dominant sex on television? On all the television shows that come on during the week, at night, you know, this family life, who is dominant? The husband is always dumb, dull, sitting in the background, taking orders, being pushed around by the smallest child.
Well, fellas, you know, we've thrown around this female superiority bit long enough.
These students were neither silent nor tranquil. Instead, the main impression they gave was that of frustration and a sense of futility. To see if the girls shared their views, we went to Douglass College, the coordinate women's college of Rutgers. Here we explained that we were attempting to search out a portrait of their generation and asked a group of students what name they would use in describing themselves.
Well, I think we're too young to be lost and too old to be forgotten. I think I'd call the generation a waiting generation.
What I want to know is, are we really a waiting generation? Waiting seems to me a passive kind of state.
I see no action on the part of our generation, just a kind of vague awareness, almost an unconscious consciousness of perhaps the threat of a third world war, perhaps a feeling we want to do something but don't know quite what to do.
Well, Sue, what do you mean by the kind of thing that we might be waiting for? Do you mean waiting for the inevitability of marriage and starting our own homes, waiting for, passively for our annihilation, waiting for a kind of fruition?
How can you wait for fruition? You have to bring that about yourself. Fulfillment isn't something that comes to you because you're there. It's something that you have to go after.
What about conformity? Don't you sense a kind of trend towards conformity? I'd like to talk about this. You think that we conform as a generation, or whether it's a whole society that
Conform
is
to what?
Yeah. Conform to a pattern. I mean, you can't say what pattern. You hear the phrase conformity all the time.
But I don't think it runs our lives entirely. I think we do have some individuality. I question whether there's any need for classifying us as anything. I think the trend of today is to classify people as something. No matter what they are, they have to be classified.
You know, I don't like generalizations either, and I fight against them, but I wonder, could we just say that perhaps one thing that we're all looking for is a kind of self-belief?
But is that unique of our generation? I mean, haven't people for years been trying to find out what they're living for, why we're here, what's our purpose?
I think the times we're living in is good for this. Perhaps in the 20s or in the 30s, people who are our age, people in their 20s, had something to cling to. They joined parties, they joined mass kinds of movements, and perhaps we don't have that now, but I think that this is a healthier thing, that we don't have this.
The individual is important instead of the group. For instance, everybody must feel this way. I don't think that's not the important thing anymore.
That even spreads to marriage, I think. So many people seem to marry before they know themselves, and they expect to share their lives with other people before they are aware of who they are.
Our generation, or the individuals within our generation, have realized that it's only by looking within themselves that they're going to find what their own happiness is. And it's not by joining a group. You see, I think this joining a group is a kind of escape. I think you lose yourself in a group.
What does it amount to? What are we looking for? I mean, what is happiness for us and the good life?
That's right. Do we know what we're looking for?
Well,
I think that's the problem we're trying to get at. I'm not sure that I know. There are surface ideas such as a happy married life is one of them. I'm sure none of us could deny that.
What kind of happy? How do you mean happy? Magazine happy? You know.
No. I think happiness is something relative.
I think this can get us to think about too what kind of profession we'd like to live in, say, or what kind of what would we like our husbands to be.
We want him to be what he wants to be, what he feels inside, to bring out the best in him. What will make him happy too. I think it's important. Here's something he's going to be doing for 40 years, perhaps, and I think if he's unhappy in it, it's going to be bad for both of us.
Yes, I think that you have to award to him the same kind of freedom for self-fulfillment that you want to award to yourself, and it's, I think, a very good and again a healthy thing if you have two individuals seeking for self-fulfillment, and this is a kind of bond in itself.
I think a lot of the fellows are looking for mothers rather than, as you say, an equal partner to share their life. Now, this may be all right because I have a feeling that we as girls may be looking for fathers, a kind of superior thing to hold on to.
If the fellows say this is a matriarchal society and they're caught in it, well, I think they're building the prison around themselves.
It's themselves. They're to blame. If they think of settling down as being the ending of their lives at 25, it's their fault.
That's the way a lot of them feel.
I know. That's right.
Out of the army into the family kind of thing.
Yes. I think it's maybe the whole idea of just at a certain age in your life feeling closed in by a family. You want to this feeling of freedom becomes very important, but you can have the same freedom even if you are married.
Even the simple thing of decorating a home can become a very important thing because it means you're building what you want for yourself.
So many women give up so much of themselves, though, when they decide to marry, and they find their whole life oriented around their home and their children, and they have no more contact with other people.
Why are you going to college?
These students have been speaking for the majority of their generation. But there is still a small group to be heard from, the Beat generation.
Sometimes I'm really convinced we are sterile dishes, watching with never-beginning patience germs to see if they will grow. Sometimes they don't, you know. And on I love you, need you, buddy days, we march in unyielding steps, eyes fixed straight, too weak to really look. We, I know, being you and me, are cautious, are calculatingly scared, undirected on our slogan diet with stainless steel fire engines and stainless steel delinquents with grade B non-corrosive ever working.
To find out about the Beat element of the generation, we went to the Five Spot Cafe in New York City. Students from Rutgers and other nearby colleges come here to listen to modern jazz and poetry.
I'm sick of your jazz, nursery rhyme, footnoted analyses. You too, huh? Real tough.
All right.
Well, I don't
That's
like
what he
that.
wants.
I don't like that.
This is a step in the progression of jazz, as it is in
Geppetto.
every musical form.
Well,
Did you feel everything with Wagner?
If this is a step in progressive, I got off a long time ago, and I don't tend to keep going on. I think it's going too far. I enjoy something like Turk Murphy, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Johnny Smith Quartet, something I can relax and enjoy. Have a couple of...
Since this poet seemed to be speaking for his generation, we asked him if the young people here were any different from the majority of college students.
I don't think so. I think it's pretty much what you like for escape or what you like for diversion or what you can afford for kicks. It's pretty much the same thing where you go.
We asked what jazz represents to these young people.
I don't know what it means to most of these people. To me, it means something interesting, a different kind of sound.
As we listened to the jazz, we watched the students responding to it. Here, where the rebellion of their generation was supposedly most extreme, we found their reactions restrained, subjective, private. Later, we return to the young poet to find out how he would describe his generation.
Well, if I had to describe my generation, and mind you, I don't know quite what a generation is, or what my generation is, I'd say kind of cautious, if anything. Very cautious.
Even the most alert and outspoken students admit to being cautious, waiting, and concerned mainly with themselves and their own individual fulfillment. Nowhere have we found any indication of this generation having a new movement or cause of its own. What does this mean to our future as a nation? Senator J. William Fulbright of Arkansas.
We have just seen that there's pretty general agreement that the youth of today is characterized by self-centeredness, by conformity, and by complacency. This is very disturbing to us because such attitudes in the past have marked the beginning of the decline of great civilizations. It is very easy to criticize the younger generation, but we must remember that they are merely reflecting the conditions and pressures of modern life in America. We should re-examine ourselves in the light of these conditions. Perhaps we're too complacent and too conformist and too lacking in interest in public affairs. If this has the effect of causing a re-examination of our own lives, we shall be deeply indebted to the younger generation.
The story of next week's episode in a moment. And now a message from your host, the Prudential Insurance Company of America.
Many homes have a special closet that might be referred to as a vacation closet with a husband in it. Also to be found in this closet are the things that inspire vacations: old clothes, fond memories, and a lot of imagination. Now, here's something that's vacation perfect. A little golf? Why, sure. Even the wife can step up to the fairway, grip the club properly, and manage to hit the ball once in a while. How about fishing? A mountain lake, a strong line of tackle, some wifely companionship, and a little luck. Now, what could be more relaxing than standing on the pier, watching sailboats passing in the crisp ocean breeze? An unexpected spray liable to come from any direction. Vacations, a cinch. Why, the closet's filled with them. All that's needed is a little organization, a little planning. It's the best way to make certain that your vacation turns out enjoyably. But planning is much more important when applied to your family's future. Ask yourself, have I planned it so that my family will always be secure? And once the kids are grown, will we have a chance to enjoy all the things we want for ourselves? The man to bring into the picture is your Prudential agent. He can help you organize your insurance program, and he'll arrange for you to receive Prudential's two-way protection. Protection for your family through the growing years, protection for your own retirement, all in one Prudential plan. In a sense, your Prudential agent can give you the key to your vacation closet, so that whether it be today, tomorrow, next month, or 20 years from now, you can really enjoy yourself with the knowledge that you are protected by Prudential. For this kind of 20th century protection, see your Prudential agent.
Next week at this time, the Prudential will present part 2 of Generation Without a Cause, the story of one young man who is in sharp conflict with the conformity and apathy of his generation. This is Walter Cronkite reporting for the 20th century.
The shows that you see on the 20th century become part of Prudential's film lending program, and 16mm prints are made available to schools, churches, and club groups throughout the country. This is done by the Prudential in the belief that an informed public contributes to the strength of the nation in this, the 20th century.